A number of top Trump picks on Capitol Hill today as they prepare for their upcoming confirmation fights. And while many Senate Republicans seem completely on board with the president-elect's selections, others are raising potential concerns today. Let's bring in CNN's Caitlin Collins, who's covering the Trump transition for us in West Palm Beach, Florida. Caitlin, we're just learning that the Trump team has signed a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Justice Department, which means that Trump's nominees, including those on the Hill today, will start undergoing background checks. Tell us more.
Yeah, Jake, this is a notable development given the delay here. Typically, this is something that an incoming president does pretty quickly after they win an election. They do sign this agreement and others with the current administration so this process can start. And obviously, the Justice Department memorandum of understanding has been one of the biggest ones because it does allow the FBI to start conducting those background checks on the senior-most aides that Trump is trying to put in his cabinet or in his top positions inside the White House. It means that they can start looking at classified information as well as this begins to get underway. And the reason, Jake, that this is so notable that it's happening now is because we are hearing from a lot more vocal Republican senators saying that they do want to see the FBI conduct background checks, that the ones that the Trump team had talked about having private investigators or private companies carry out just was not going to carry the same weight with these Republican senators, some of whom may be on the fence about some of these nominees when it comes to how they're vetting and looking at them, because obviously the FBI background check process is done to make sure that these people have a full understanding of what is in their background and whether or not they should be trusted with the nation's most classified secrets. And so looking at that from that perspective, Jake, this is an announcement that came today from the Trump team with a statement from the incoming chief of staff, Susie Wiles, about getting this process going because there had been some concerns internally. One, the Republican senators were going to ultimately demand this, certainly those that are on the fence, and two, that it would delay the confirmation process because typically for the Attorney General, for the Secretary of State, for those top jobs, those are done pretty quickly after the incoming president is inaugurated because they need those people in place at those obviously those key and critical agencies, Jake. And so a few things, though, to note here. One, it's not totally clear that they are going to submit all of Trump's picks to get background checks. That is something that we're still trying to determine from our sources of what this process is going to look like and if every cabinet pick is actually going to have to submit to an FBI background check for these senators who are going to be vetting them and what that looks like. And Jake, I'll also remind you, this was a big issue in Trump's first term when it came to security clearances. It led to the ouster of his staff secretary, Rob Porter, after they found troubling information in his background in regards to women. But also when there was Trump was given advice by top officials in his administration not to grant Jared Kushner a security clearance. He overrode those concerns and granted him one anyway, even though he had said at the time that he wasn't going to be involved in that process. So how this all shakes out still matters, Jake, but this is notable because it does jumpstart that process, as we were hearing from key Republican senators saying that they did want to see background checks.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. Caitlin, of course, is working on new reporting on the Trump transition, and you can look for more of that on her show, The Source, which airs tonight and every weeknight at 9 p.m. Eastern here on CNN. Let's go to CNN's Manu Raju, live for us on Capitol Hill. And Manu, what are you hearing from Republicans, especially when it comes to Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who's on the Hill pressing the flesh and meeting with Republican senators today?
Yeah, in his meeting that's about to start in a matter of minutes with Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri, this coming after a number of Republicans of simply not saying how they would come down, whether they would support this nomination, but acknowledging that this could be a difficult road because Democrats are likely to be in unison opposing this nominee. And more than 3 Republican senators, if they were to vote against him, that would mean that he could not get the votes to become confirmed. There are much more than 3 Republican senators who have concerns, have questions about these allegations of misconduct that have come out in various reports. And one key senator earlier today, Senator Lindsey Graham, acknowledged a tough road ahead and for Hegseth to get the votes.
Some of these articles are very disturbing. He, obviously has a chance to defend himself here, but some of this stuff is going to be difficult. Time will tell. I like Pete. I've known him for a very, very long time.
And other senators, including Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, someone who herself has been a survivor of sexual assault and has called for reforms at the Pentagon on how it handles those crimes, has been notably undecided about this nomination. In fact, she was asked earlier today by our colleague Ted Barrett about her concerns, and she indicated she was going to have a thorough and frank conversation with Hegseth later this week. Now, it's still possible, Jake, that these Republican senators could ultimately fall in line, but there's little margin for error. One key senator, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, I asked her if she has concerns about all these reports and the allegations of misconduct involving Hegseth. She said she wants to see that full FBI background check, review all those allegations. She said those all need to be investigated by the FBI before she makes a determination here. So a long road ahead for Hegseth to get this job. There's a lot of Republican senators right now undecided, Jake.
All right, Manu Raju, thanks so much. Let's jump right in with our panel. And Mike, you heard Senator Lindsey Graham there saying Hegseth's confirmation will be difficult now that we know the FBI background checks are in process, although who knows if Hegseth's going to get one or not. Do you think Republicans are nervous about what might come forward from that process?
No, and let's just assume that Hegseth is going to be one of the individuals that, if not all of the nominees, that will have background checks.
Well, it sounds like some Republicans are demanding and insisting on it.
I think it's a game changer, mainly because at some point with all of the allegations that are against Hegseth, they were going to have to go to a background check anyway. I just don't know politically how they would have avoided it. And if they had waited much longer, it would have delayed the confirmation hearing because they would have demanded, the Democrats will absolutely demand this, and I'm sure several Republicans will demand, if you're going to do it for one, you're going to do it for all. So if they had delayed this, we would not have had votes as soon as possible on a lot of these nominees, and that would have delayed the whole process. So I think what Caitlin was reporting on today is going to be very helpful to getting these people across the finish line. Now, the individual allegations, that's something else to talk about.
So, Nair, Kristen Soltis Anderson, who's on the show frequently, her polling firm posted that Americans support most of the people Trump has nominated to key roles. You can see Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State nominee, receives the most net support, +9, followed by Vivek Ramaswamy at +5 for Doge, I guess. Pete Hegseth has the lowest support at -2. That's only after Matt Gaetz withdrew his nomination. Do you think that matters to this process?
Oh, definitely, because so much of how Trump has been picking his cabinet nominees is based on who presents well on TV, who can help push the value culture war narrative that helped propel the campaign. But governing is fundamentally different. And the U.S. military, the Pentagon, is the largest employer in the country. The public has direct interaction with that agency, probably more so than any other, that some of these places can be very obscure. The challenge of coming out of the gate for Hegseth saying he doesn't believe women should serve is that they're 20% of the military already, nearly 20%. Recruitment is down in general. How do you suddenly go into this environment as effectively the CEO and then tell your people you believe in them, you want them to do better, but also discredit many of the people who are already serving, make it harder to recruit and strengthen your workforce while on top of that facing all these other allegations?
You want to weigh in on Hegseth?
I mean, I think he's ludicrously unqualified for the job. You know, he's never had a senior position in national security. He's never run an organization of more than a dozen people. He didn't do very well in the couple of small organizations he did run. So I don't even care. I mean, I care about the personal stuff, but it's such an insult, honestly, to the entire national security community to nominate him for a job that Bob Gates and Leon Panetta and so many Dick Cheney and whatever you think of each of these individuals, Bill Cohen, serious people have had. Some cabinet jobs, you give them to some political person, it's not a big deal, but defense, it's kind of an important job.
Speaking of serious people, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg warned against confirming Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as health secretary. Here's what he said at a health conference in D.C. Take a listen.
Putting RFK Jr. in charge of that would be beyond dangerous. It would be medical malpractice on a mass scale.
Why would President-elect Trump expend so much political capital on this guy who is really of the left, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Well, I may take initial exception with the political capital. I don't know that he's spending a lot of political capital on these nominees. When some political capital needed to be spent on Gaetz withdrew. I think this election was a disruption election. From the perspective of President-elect Trump, he is going to push as many nominees that may seem unqualified, may seem to the left, as possible to see how far he can move the needle on all of this. And in his mind, the American people voted to change government as usual, and that's what these nominees represent.